I would have chosen you if you had just fought for us, my girlfriend sobbed. I silently packed my bags and vanished. A month later, she reached out begging. I thought she was the one. 5 years of building a life together. 5 years of shared dreams, morning coffees, and late-night conversations about our future. 5 years that ended with a single notification on her phone. It was an ordinary Tuesday when everything changed. Karen had fallen asleep on the couch, her phone buzzing softly on the coffee table. I wasn't the type to snoop, but something about the repeated notifications caught my attention. When I glanced over, I saw his name, Daniel. My stomach dropped. The air in our apartment suddenly felt too thin. I knew who Daniel was, a coworker. Someone she'd mentioned casually, too casually perhaps. I picked up the phone, my fingers trembling slightly. The message preview showed enough. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. My world collapsed in slow motion. The room spun. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. I put the phone down exactly as I'd found it and walked to the bathroom. Splashed cold water on my face. Looking at my reflection, the face of a man who just discovered he was a fool. At that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I would plan my exit meticulously, leaving on my terms, not hers. For 3 months, I lived a double life. On the surface, everything was normal. I smiled at the right times, said I love you when expected, discussed future plans we would never share. But inside, I was detaching, withdrawing my emotional investment piece by piece. I documented her lies about working late, saved screenshots of suspicious texts when I could, prepared financially for separation. Our lease was set to expire in April. I marked the date on my mental calendar and counted down the days. Karen noticed changes in me, small ones. "You seem distant lately," she said one night over dinner. I shrugged, just stressed about work. She seemed to accept this, never once considering that I knew. Her confidence in her deception was almost impressive. As weeks passed, I became more deliberate in my subtle signals. When she mentioned Daniel in casual conversation, I'd pause a beat too long before responding. When she lied about working late, I'd stare at her just a second longer than comfortable. I could see confusion flicker across her face, doubt creeping in around the edges of her certainty. One night she left her laptop open while showering. I casually walked by and closed an email she'd left visible, one from him. Later, she frantically searched her sent folder, her face pale. "Looking for something?" I asked innocently. Her eyes darted to mine, then away. "Just checking work stuff." I noticed her password protecting her devices after that, checking to see if I was watching when she texted. She began mentioning Daniel less, as if his name might trigger something. When I declined an invitation to her office holiday party, panic flashed across her face. "But you always come. Everyone's expecting you." Everyone, or just one person she didn't want me to see. "I think you'll have more fun without me hovering," I said, watching her calculate the implications. She began trying harder in our relationship, cooking my favorite meals, initiating intimacy more often, planning weekend trips, the desperate moves of someone who suspects they're losing their grip. I accepted her efforts with a pleasant detachment that clearly unnerved her. The day finally came when she had an overnight conference in Chicago. I knew from checking her location discreetly that she hadn't left town. She was with him. This was my moment. I had arranged time off work, lined up friends with trucks and moving supplies. By noon, everything that was mine had been carefully removed from our shared apartment. I left a single note on the kitchen counter. "Goodbye, have fun with Daniel." Short, simple, devastating. Then I blocked her number, her email, all social media, complete digital amputation. I moved into a prearranged apartment across town and waited for the fallout. It came in waves, first through mutual friends. Karen's freaking out. She came home and everything was gone. Then through her family. Her sister called from an unknown number demanding explanations. I said nothing to anyone except, "Ask her about Daniel." 2 weeks passed. I heard through our landlord that Karen couldn't afford the rent alone. She was facing eviction. Her perfect life was unraveling, one thread at a time. A month later, she somehow got a new number to reach me. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I have nowhere to go," she sobbed. Please, can we talk? I made a mistake. I miss you. I laughed. The sound surprised even me, cold and unfamiliar. Go live with Daniel, I said and hung up. She called back immediately. I answered, curious what desperation sounded like. How did you know? She demanded, her voice shifting from tears to anger. How long have you known about him? Long enough, I replied calmly. Long enough to watch you lie to my face night after night. Long enough to see you check your phone when you thought I wasn't looking. Long enough to plan my exit perfectly. You could have said something, she shouted. You could have confronted me, give me a chance to explain. Explain what, Karen, how special he is, how did it just happen, how it didn't mean anything. My voice remained steady, detached. I wasn't interested in your explanations. So you just watched me, planned all this behind my back. Her voice cracked with disbelief. Who does that? Who just pretends everything is normal while plotting to leave? Someone who values their dignity, I replied. Someone who refuses to beg a cheater to choose them. I would have chosen you, she cried, if you had just fought for us. That's the difference between us, I cut in. I don't fight for people who betray me, I walk away. You're cruel, she whispered. I never thought you could be so cold. And I never thought you could be so deceptive. Guess we both misjudged each other. A moment of silence stretched between us. I'm being evicted, she finally said. My parents won't take me in, I have nowhere to go. That sounds like a consequence of your actions, I said. Not my problem. After 5 years, that's all you have to say. Her voice had gone small. Don't you even care what happens to me? I considered the question. I cared about the person I thought you were. That person deserved my concern. The real you, the one who could lie so effortlessly, that person is a stranger to me. I blocked the new number and continued rebuilding my life. Each day got easier. I focused on myself, my career, my healing. Started traveling to places we'd talked about visiting together. Posted pictures of my new life on social media where mutual friends would see. Not for her benefit, I knew she'd created fake accounts to check up on me, but for mine. Each smile in those photos became more genuine. 6 months later, I ran into one of Karen's friends at a coffee shop. She hesitated before approaching me. You should know, she said. Daniel was married. His wife found out about Karen. It wasn't pretty. My coffee suddenly tasted sweeter. Karen lost her job, she continued. She's moving back in with her parents next week. I nodded, feeling nothing but a distant satisfaction. The universe had its own way of balancing accounts. Do you ever miss her? She asked. I considered the question honestly. I miss who I thought she was, I replied. That person never existed. As I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, I realized something important. The best revenge wasn't planning my exit or watching her life crumble. It was the simple act of moving forward, of finding happiness she couldn't touch. She had taken 5 years of my life. I wouldn't give her another minute of my thoughts. Sometimes, when trust is shattered beyond repair, the only closure is knowing you had the last laugh. Not from cruelty or spite, but from the quiet dignity of refusing to be anyone's second choice. I was nobody's backup plan, and that realization felt like freedom. A year passed, then another. My life expanded in ways I couldn't have imagined when I was with Karen. New job, new friends, new perspective. I dated casually, never rushing toward commitment. The experience had taught me to value my independence, to recognize red flags I'd once ignored. Then I met Mia, unexpected and refreshing like a cool breeze on a stifling day. She worked at the bookstore near my apartment. Our conversations about obscure novels turned into coffee dates, then dinners, then more. With Mia, I found myself wanting to trust again, though the process was slow. She understood without me explaining too much, had her own scars from past relationships. We moved forward carefully with open eyes. I remember the first time I stayed over at her place. Waking up at 3 a.m., that momentary panic, checking her phone while she slept. My hands shaking with the muscle memory of betrayal. Nothing, just her wallpaper, a photo of us hiking last month. I put the phone down, disgusted with myself, promising never to do that again. Trust had to be rebuilt from the ground up, starting with me. The healing wasn't linear. Some days the past felt distant, irrelevant. Other days something would trigger the memory, a text notification, a specific perfume, the mention of Chicago, and I'd be right back in that moment of discovery. Heart racing, palms sweating. Mia noticed. "You're somewhere else right now," she'd say gently, not accusing, just observing. I learned to be honest about these moments. "Old ghosts," I'd explain, and she'd nod, giving me space to return to the present at my own pace. 3 years after I walked out of that apartment, I received a letter forwarded from my old address. Corinne's handwriting. I almost threw it away unopened. Curiosity won. Inside was a 5-page handwritten apology. She detailed how her choices had destroyed everything good in her life, how therapy had helped her understand her self-destructive patterns, how she didn't expect forgiveness but needed to acknowledge the pain she'd caused. The final line read, "I hope you found happiness. You deserve better than what I gave you." I folded the letter and put it away in a drawer. Not because it meant anything romantic, that door was permanently closed, but because it represented something I hadn't expected, actual closure. That night, as Mia and I cooked dinner in our shared kitchen, I told her about the letter. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes concerned. I pulled her close, inhaling the scent of her shampoo. "Better than okay," I said. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." In the end, that's the real last laugh, finding joy despite those who tried to take it from you. Life goes on, better than before. That's the sweetest victory of all. There's a strange feeling that comes with being cheated on. It's not just the betrayal, but the retroactive questioning of everything you thought was real. Every late night at work, every business trip, every time her phone was face down on the table. Were these all moments of deception I'd missed? I found myself rewriting our history. 5 years together suddenly seemed like 5 years of potential lies. Had there been others before Daniel? Had our entire relationship been built on shifting sand? These questions haunted me during those first months alone. I'd catch myself lying awake at 2 a.m., replaying conversations for clues I might have missed, analyzing birthday cards and anniversary notes for insincerity I'd been too blind to see. It was an exhausting way to live, like being both detective and victim in my own personal crime drama. The turning point came during a hiking trip 6 months after the breakup. I'd driven 3 hours to reach a trail Corinne had always refused to try. "Too difficult," she'd said. Something about conquering it alone felt important. At the summit, sweating and breathless, I looked out over the sprawling valley below. My phone had no service. No one knew exactly where I was. I felt completely, wonderfully alone. In that moment of solitude, I realized I'd been carrying her betrayal like a stone in my pocket, reaching for it, turning it over, letting it weigh me down. I couldn't control what she'd done, but I could control whether I let it define my future. I shouted into the empty air. The echo bounced back, my voice but not my pain. That night I deleted all the screenshots I'd saved of her lies, erased the false location data I'd collected, removed the final digital tendrils of our connection. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly, more like amputation to prevent further infection. I started therapy shortly after, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand the patterns that had led me here. Why I had ignored red flags, why I had chosen someone who could hurt me so deeply. "You need to forgive yourself," my therapist said during one session, "for not seeing it sooner, for loving someone who didn't deserve your trust." Those words hit harder than expected. I'd been so focused on Corinne's betrayal that I hadn't recognized my own self-blame festering beneath the surface. Healing came in unexpected ways after that, through new friendships with people who had no connection to my past life, through rediscovering old hobbies I'd abandoned during the relationship, through the simple pleasure of making decisions without considering anyone else's preferences. When I started dating again, casual coffees that sometimes led to second dates, I approached relationships differently. I was more guarded, yes, but also more honest, about my expectations, my boundaries, my past. Most didn't make it past the second or third date, not because of chemistry issues, but because I was no longer willing to ignore incompatibilities for the sake of not being alone. Then came Mia, browsing in the history section of my favorite bookstore. She was arguing good-naturedly with the owner about medieval European politics. Her passion was magnetic. Her smile was genuine. Our first conversation lasted 2 hours. She was unlike anyone I'd dated before, intellectually challenging, emotionally forthright, refreshingly direct. "I don't play games," she told me on our third date. "Life's too short for that nonsense." I found myself wanting to believe her, terrified to believe her. The contradiction defined our early relationship. We took things slowly, not just physically but emotionally, building friendship alongside attraction, learning each other's patterns and triggers. I told her about Karen 6 months in, not the whole story, just enough to explain my occasional moments of irrational panic. "Thank you for telling me," she said simply. No judgment, no pity, just acceptance. Mia had her own past. A 7-year relationship ended by her partner's alcoholism and refusal to seek help. She understood the damage that broken trust could do, the vulnerability it took to try again. We moved in together after a year and a half. The decision terrified me, sharing space again, becoming interdependent, risking another devastating exit. "We can sign a short lease," Mia suggested, sensing my hesitation. "6 months, see how it goes." Her practical approach to my fears made them manageable, made me love her more. The day we got Karen's letter was ordinary in every other way. Mail sorting, bill paying, the mundane administration of adult life. Her handwriting on the envelope sent a jolt through me, a ghost reaching through time. Reading her words was surreal. The person who wrote this careful apology seemed entirely different from the woman who had lied to my face for months. People change, I supposed. Or perhaps they just reveal different facets of themselves depending on the circumstances. Karen wrote that she'd lost everything. Daniel had returned to his wife. Her friends had distanced themselves after learning the truth. Her professional reputation had suffered from the workplace scandal. She didn't ask for reconciliation, didn't suggest contact, just offered acknowledgement of the pain she'd caused and her genuine regret. Was it selfish of her, this confession? Perhaps. But it gave me something I hadn't realized I needed, confirmation that I hadn't imagined or exaggerated the betrayal, that my pain was justified, that my response, though calculated, was understandable. That night lying beside Mia, I felt the last of Karen's power over me dissolve. "I think I'm finally free," I whispered into the darkness. Mia's hand found mine under the covers. She squeezed gently, saying nothing, understanding that some moments don't need words. 6 months later, I proposed. Not because I needed marriage to feel secure, but because I wanted to build a future with someone who had shown me what real partnership could be. We wrote our own vows. Mine included a promise never to take her trust for granted. Hers included a commitment to honesty, even when the truth was difficult. Did Karen's betrayal still influence me? Of course. We are all shaped by our past injuries, but it no longer controlled me, no longer defined my capacity for trust or happiness. Sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the most profound growth. Sometimes the hardest lessons teach us exactly what we need to know. And sometimes, when one door closes brutally, another opens to a view more beautiful than we could have imagined. I got the last laugh not by wishing Karen ill, but by finding something real and lasting because of what she did, not despite it. To anyone who has felt the sting of betrayal, your story doesn't end there. The laughter that follows pain is sweeter for having known its opposite. The lesson I took from all of this wasn't about revenge or justice. It was simpler and more profound. Self-respect is non-negotiable. When someone shows you they don't value your trust, believe them the first time. Don't waste precious years hoping they'll become the person you thought they were. I learned that leaving can require more courage than staying. That closure often comes from within, not from others. That the need for explanation is sometimes just the heart's way of buying time before accepting an uncomfortable truth. Most importantly, I discovered that betrayal doesn't define you, your response to it does. You can let it harden you into someone bitter and suspicious, or you can use it as a chisel to carve away what doesn't serve you, revealing a stronger, wiser version of yourself. The real last laugh isn't about watching someone who hurt you suffer. It's about reaching a place where their actions no longer have the power to define your happiness, where you can look back and feel nothing but gratitude for the lessons that brought you where you are. That's not just moving on, that's transcendence.